The Fighting Illini score 112 points in their season opener. Let's talk about it. Locked On Illini. Let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini, a live episode, a live post-game episode. That's right, we do this for football, and we're also going to be doing this for basketball all season long. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. A simple reminder, you can find us on your favorite audio platform. You can find us on YouTube. Just do a search for Locked On Illini, and that's a way for you guys to communicate with me as well. Today's going to be a fun episode for obvious reasons. We're going to be talking about the season opening victory for the Illini over the Eastern Illinois Panthers, a game that was close for maybe the first 10 minutes or so, but ultimately ended up being very impressive. At some point, they essentially almost doubled Eastern Illinois in the final score. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. Your first $5 bet, if you win your first $5 bet. Sorry, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so today's a special occasion. Obviously with the season starting today, I didn't want to talk solo. I know there's going to be a lot of excitement on this team, and you kind of got a glimpse of why this was a fun game to watch. And so I thought of someone no better to ask than my partner on my other show, Illini Cast. Austin, thank you for jumping on Locked On Illini today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Austin, that was fun.
Yes, it was.
This is the type of game that we've been teased about all season long, hearing about how Illinois is going to be an offensive juggernaut. And, when it comes to pace, dare I say lack of defense or whatever it was, I feel like we saw a glimpse of everything today. And, I will talk about this in a later segment, but Will Riley, DGL, it seems like there was just a lot to appreciate in this season opening victory.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like an NBA All-Star game where, like how James Harden and Kevin Durant are like, hey, guys, I'm going to do my thing right here and do what I do well. And that's what happened in this Illini game where Will Riley did what he wanted to do. Kasparis had some moments where he was phenomenal as well. And then Tomislav Ivisic had his moments. So it truly felt like a team win, but the individual stardoms that took place in this game was just phenomenal. So kudos to the Illini offense. The defense gave up 35 points in the first half, and that is a little bit of a concern, seeing some of the offense that Eastern Illinois was able to get early on, but then the defense locked in and locked on, pardon the pun. So that is kind of how the Illini game may have to go every single time, is just to pray that the offense is able to do what it did tonight, and hopefully the defense can just keep them 1 point less than what the Illini did. But obviously in the second half, this Eastern Illinois team lost a lot of fire and lost a lot of the talent, lost the talent advantage as well in the second half.
And I see the chat popping right now. I appreciate all of you, and I promise we're going to get to the chat. Please leave your questions, comments, all of that. We're going to address all that later on in the show. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Sunny Verma. This is Locked On Illini, and I'm here providing daily content for you. That's right, every single day. So please, while you're sitting here and watching us talk, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and really help this channel grow. So, Austin, what I kind of want to talk about is, obviously, we've got a couple, maybe 2 or 3 guys who are complete stars in this game. But before we kind of focus on them in the second segment, I want to collectively bring out what I'm going to talk about. I guess I'll refer to them as the future of the Illini, and that is the 4 freshmen. Let's just talk about Ivisic. We can talk about Will Riley. Ivisic had a solid game, and there's one other guy I'm missing. Who am I missing right now? Morez Johnson. Morez Johnson set a record for blocks for an Illini freshman. And by the way, this was his first game in college basketball. It's 8 rebounds. In our season preview episode yesterday of Illini Cast, I said that Morez Johnson was my prediction for the leading rebounder on this team. And you just see, like, when he's on the court, all he does is grab rebounds. He's a lot bigger than I thought he was, especially seeing him in on a college basketball court. He's one of those guys where, reflecting back, I'm kind of glad Dane Danger ultimately moved on, because I think Morez Johnson is an upgrade on Dane in almost every facet.
Yeah, I mean, he is so athletic. He was able to get that immediate block right 4 seconds almost into his Illinois debut. The getting 3 years in the making. I mean, he committed 3 years ago to the Illini, and for him to make that emphatic block right away was just like, oh yeah, this is why we got him. This is Morez Johnson. And the fact that he was fourth fiddle out of these guys that are making their college debut is just incredible. I mean, Tomislav is technically a sophomore due to weird NCAA rules, but this was his first game as a Fighting Illini and as a big man in the Big Ten. And my goodness, 14 points, 12 rebounds for him as well. These newcomers are coming in fast, and they are coming in furious as well. They don't look like they have to acclimate to the college basketball experience. Yes, I know it's against EIU, but there were not a lot of freshman moments out there from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, who had a poor game freshman-wise. I don't think anyone. Well, Jake Davis, a personal favorite of a friend of ours, Austin, he didn't exactly have the best game. Let's just say he got off to a kind of a rough start, but otherwise, all these guys were kind of playing their roles. I'm taking a look at the box score now. Just to recap, for those of you who may not have been able to watch the game because it was on BTN+, Illinois shot 31 for 64 for 48% from the field. They shot 42 3-pointers, and they made 38% of them. And trust me, that stat was a second half stat, because in the first half, we really didn't shoot the ball all that well. And that's kind of why Eastern Illinois, I guess you can say, hung around for maybe the first 10 minutes or so. There was no point really that I was worried, because it seemed pretty obvious to me that we were just missing kind of open shots. And I think that's just going to be the story of the team this year. I think this is a team that's capable of losing to a bottom 30 team at some point in the season, but this is also a team that in 3 weeks could beat an Alabama team on Thursday night, November 20th. I think it's bottom line is this team's just going to be a lot of fun to watch, and night in and night out, I have no idea what I'm about to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of these stat lines, like Ben Hummerkaus, 5 for 8 from the field. Will Riley, I know his 31 points is the big headline here, but he was 10 for 13 from the field and 6 for 7 from the free throw line and 5 for 6 from the three-point line. That is just unbelievable efficiency from a freshman who is extremely young. He reclassified. He was supposed to be in the class of 2025, and for him to have this game right away is something special. So the impact of these young guys that came in, it's just incredible. I mean, Trey White, 5 points. He was my pick for the most points for the Illini in yesterday's season preview that we did for Illini Cast. But I mean, he did a lot of what he was asked to do. 4 rebounds by a guard is kind of what Brad Underwood expects from his guards, to be a part of the rebounding game. So top to bottom, what a performance by every single guy. And I mean, AJ Red got 2 points. That's always a feel-good story. So, I mean, it just felt like this was the mix that Brad Underwood wanted, and we'll get to it in a later segment. But maybe this is the reason why a guy by the name of Ty Rogers decided that he wants to stop playing for the University of Illinois.
It's time to talk about it right now, Austin. Let's talk about Will Riley. Let's talk about Trey White, and I guess we can mention a little bit the Ty Rogers situation right after this. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. the energy shot made just for super fans like us. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. Whether it comes to a big play in the game or just one of the big matchups like we have coming up against Michigan State. Just remember that 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, so let's talk about the star of the game, the guy who most Illini fans, if you take a look at our chat right now, are talking about, and that's understandably Will Riley, a guy who his box score looks, as you mentioned, he played, I don't see how many minutes, but he went 10 for 13, 5 for 6 from three-point land, 31 points as a freshman, which I think I saw a stat was the sixth highest, in freshman total in Illinois history, 6 for 7 from the free throw line, and he also had 7 rebounds. And I guess let's just say it, like, we knew Will Riley has the potential to score, and Brad Underwood has been telling us that. People in practice have been telling us that, but you really saw the potential when we discussed like Will Riley. I think we mentioned it on the Illini cast that he's one of those guys, 2 or 3 guys who has the potential to lead this team in scoring. And you kind of got a glimpse of why. First half wise, I think he only like 7 or 8 points, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Let me know in the chat. Do you recall, Austin?
Yeah, it was single digits, 5 or 6. It wasn't anything to write home about.
And then at the end of the second half, now granted, it was garbage minutes. And so, the pressure wasn't exactly on. But just to see a kid who, by the way, is 17 years old. He's not even 18 years old yet. Just go on a heater the way he did. I feel like it perfectly encapsulated the night for Illini fans. And especially, a lot of us who, may have been a little humbled by that experience against Ole Miss. But, I think things jump right back up seeing this dominant victory led by Will Riley.
And, that's not to mention what he did whenever he wasn't scoring the basketball. He had 8 rebounds, too. So the fact that he was putting his nose in the basketball where the orange ball is, he was going and grabbing it. This wasn't just a empty 31-point performance. This was a substantive game from top to bottom from Will Riley. So the fact that he is able to do that as a freshman, to realize that, hey, maybe if I'm not scoring, maybe try to get some rebounds. And 4 of those were offensive rebounds, which Brad Underwood has to absolutely love. It just was incredible seeing Will Riley just embrace the moment, even though it was against EIU. But he had the crowd chanting his name in his first game at the State Farm Center, which was something crazy. It's something out of a fairy tale. So that's why you get 5-star talents, everyone. Like, even though they are freshmen, he is something special, and Illinois fans hopefully embrace him from day one.
Now, if I recall, didn't DGL have a monster game in his first year, or in his first game last year as well?
It was one of those, maybe not first game, but one of those like early non-conference, not so much of a test kind of game. So yeah, he had one for sure.
Yeah, but the difference between Will Riley is DGL wasn't really expected to play much in the rotation on last year's team, especially being a freshman. But Will Riley is a guy who we're going to count on to be, one of our 2, if not best player on the team this year. I talked about this with you yesterday. I'm very confident in Kasparas Jakučionis. I've seen enough of what he's done in Europe, and I've heard enough about how he's played here in practice to, know that he's going to be one of the star players on this team. The question I have is who's going to be the second guy? Last year we had this question. We knew Terrence Shannon Jr. was going to be a stud, but we didn't know who that second guy was going to be. We didn't know who Robin was going to be. And it turned out it was Marcus Domask, who didn't even end up being a Robin. It was more like of a Batman-Superman combination. Both of them were outstanding players. This year on this team, especially with everyone so young, a lot of them don't have that track record when it comes to the college game. Like, Domask obviously was playing in his 4th or 5th year. He had won MVC Player of the Year. This year, we have Ben Humrickhouse, who had an okay game. I don't think he stuck out by any chance. But, I mean, even
I think he had a great game.
What was that?
14 points, 5 for 8 from the field. I think he had a great game.
It's funny I say that. Like, I was like, but I think he was just overshadowed by everyone else because I completed that sentence saying he had an okay game. Then I looked at the box score, and you're right. 5 for 8, 14 points, 5 rebounds. But that's just what kind of night it was. But, before we start talking about DGL, I just want to, finish up our thoughts on Will Riley. If he plays like this, you're talking about an all-time Illini freshman season. I don't recall ever, and you tell me, your memory's a lot better than mine, when we've had a freshman scoring talent like we have now in Will Riley.
I think you have to go back to maybe the 1980s, because it was such a veteran-laden team with Bill Self in the early 2000s, and then Bruce Weber, obviously, it was upperclassmen with Dee Brown and Darren Williams, and those guys had to put the brakes on a little bit because they were behind Frank Williams and the crew back in the early 2000s. Marcus Liberty from Malcolm commented, that's a great one. I think you have to go back to those kind of teams as freshmen. So because it's always been an upperclassman that stayed true to Ayo Dosunmu, that stayed true to Terrence Shannon Jr. These were older guys compared to what Morez Johnson and what Will Riley and Ivisic and Kasparis are doing. So I just think it's incredible what Will Riley did tonight, even though it was against EIU.
And, let's also give DGL his flowers. He was the clear star of the first half of this game. He had 18 points in the first half. He simply could not be stopped. The joy of watching DGL is he's one of the few players on this basketball team who you can tell enjoys playing on both sides of the basketball court. He's just come into this season, and this includes the matchup against Ole Miss in the exhibition where he was arguably our best player. He's just come into the season a lot more confident. He really feels like he belongs. He thinks he's a legit good, basketball player. And sometimes that's what you kind of need. He's not the biggest guy in the world, and he's not necessarily the most skillful player that we've had in years past, but he is skillful. He can score. He knows what he does really, really well, and he can't wait to show you. And sometimes some players are talented out there, but they shun the spotlight. This is a kid who, if it was up to him, he'd be on the court 40 minutes a night doing what he does best.
Yeah, 4 for 8 from beyond the 3-point line. 21 points. This guy is the microwave of the Illini off the bench. And I said it in the season preview. This is kind of what you expect from DGL. I don't know if it's 21 points every night. Maybe it's 15. Maybe it's 14 off the bench. That is just a great effort by DGL. He has not pouted a single time from his time last year where he had to take a back seat to Marcus Domask and Terrence Shannon Jr. And this year, even when Brad Underwood kind of recruited over him with the likes of KJ and Will Riley and Trey White and Boswell, he has not taken his foot off the pedal. And he's going to force Brad Underwood to make some tough decisions, whether it's a Trey White or Kylan. If DGL keeps doing what he is doing, this is going to make Brad Underwood's job even harder than it has to be because of the performance that DGL has done both against Ole Miss and against EIU.
And I do want to talk about Brad Underwood. We'll talk about him right after this break. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we have 100+ watching the show. I appreciate all of you. This is the first time we're actually doing a basketball post game on the show. So if those of you out there who are not football fans, obviously we've been covering the football team out there. This might be your first introduction to Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny. Again, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm out here every single day giving you Illini content and coverage, and it's a lot more fun when you have games like this. Austin, I kind of wanted to address the Ty Rodgers thing. I'm going to go more in depth into it on tomorrow's episode because I really do have a lot of thoughts. But I guess ultimately, what I'll try to get your thoughts. But my overall arcing feeling is today was a good example of why Ty might have made the right choice in moving on from the Illini. This team is very young. And I said it early on in the offseason, and Brad Underwood said it himself during media days. I know others don't agree, but I've said that this team's talent level, this team's ceiling is a lot higher than even last year's team. I'm not saying it's better than last year's team. Last year's team had a lot of experience, a lot of veterans, but like we just talked about in the last segment, Will Riley at the age of 17, we've never had a player like that score 31 points. And again, being only 17 years old. This team has 2 potential lottery picks on its team. Maybe 5 or 6 NBA guys who are going to show up on NBA draft boards. Ty Rodgers, who I'm, of course, a big fan of, watching him in high school locally, he was a guy that very easy to root for, a true epitome. And you mentioned this multiple times during the breaking news episode of LilliniCast earlier today, an everyday guy, a Brad Underwood guy. But I truly think that us Illini fans, this is not a sad moment in Illini history. What we need to, the way I'm looking at it is when Brad Underwood, during the offseason, had that press conference where he talked to media and he talked about, hey, after that UConn game, I caught a glimpse of what a real national championship contender looks like. And Illinois, for the last couple of years, has built a very talented roster, we've been a good college basketball team for a half a decade now. But our aspirations are higher. Brad Underwood's aspirations are higher. He wants to win a national title. And that's why, sure, it hurts, in particular in the short term, losing a guy like Sincere Harris, Amani Hansberry, and looks like now it's going to be Ty Rodgers. But I think the whole point is you're replacing them with guys who can reach levels that the 3 guys I just mentioned can't. Again, Dane Danger, could we use him on this basketball team? Sure, especially his scoring touch and the way he played in that Big Ten tournament last year. But is there anyone who would take Dane Danger over Morez Johnson right now? And I'm just talking about this season. I'm not even talking about sophomore year Morez Johnson or junior year Morez Johnson. Ty Rodgers, I'm sad to see him go, but when you see Will Riley play the minutes that he played today, the way he played today, you've got to allot him 25 minutes a game. Trey White, another supremely talented player who does a lot of the things Ty Rodgers does, but he can also put the ball in the bucket. He's going to need minutes. Brad Underwood, I think, called him the most consistent player on the team all offseason long. I hinted at this on Sunday because the writing was kind of at the wall. I didn't know he was going to redshirt. Don't get me wrong. I didn't know he was transferring, but to me, he looked like the odd man out. And I think today was kind of a good glimpse as to why.
Yeah, I mean, Ty is in these practices, and I think a lot of fans forget that these are personal assessments more than anything, too. I don't think Brad Underwood would ever go up to Ty and be like, hey, I think you need a red shirt. I don't think that's in Brad Underwood's DNA, especially for what Ty Rodgers has brought to the program. Him being the everyday guy for Brad Underwood. Ty Rodgers sees the writing on the wall in practices. He sees what Will Riley's talent is. He sees what KJ's talent is. And when you see that in practice every single day, I mean, it's just like any job. Like, If you see a guy that's better in sales than you, like that this is going to be his organization as a sales manager kind of thing. Like if you are in the room and in the practices, who the better guys are, and the opportunities aren't going to be there for you because, again, Will Riley is better, KJ is better, Trey White is probably better than Ty Rodgers at this point. Ty is a player that's going to help you lead to Big Ten championships, but he's not going to get you to national championships with his lack of scoring ability. Whenever it becomes 4-on-5 in an NCAA tournament game, that's where it becomes a huge issue. Whenever it's 5-on-5, then you have a shot at winning every single game in the NCAA tournament. And that's what Illinois has. I mean, you saw it tonight. Tomislav with a double-double. Will Riley, 31 points. KJ in double figures. Trey White having his rebounds. So I really think this is a good thing for Ty Rodgers as well to really get to a point where he wants to be a starter and be a major part. Maybe it's with West Virginia and DeVries and Chester Frazier because there's a connection there. And that's Ty Rodgers is the perfect West Virginia style basketball player. But Illinois has higher aspirations, and they've got higher talent than they have ever gotten. And that's what happens when you have roster crunches. I mean, would Luke Goody be that big of a difference maker in tonight's game? I don't think so. That would take minutes away from Will Riley because he's a veteran. I think he would take minutes away from KJ. So I think whenever you see guys transfer out and it's for the success of your basketball team, you're going to lose some good players because you're going to get great players.
And again, this is not a slander Ty Rodgers segment at all. I talked about him in the past as being one of my all-time favorite Illini for what he did. But again, just to kind of double up on what you and I are both saying, his two worst games of the season last year came against UConn and Purdue, two teams who played for the national championship. And if anything, that kind of confirms what you and I are saying. I think you said it perfectly. Ty Rodgers can play a big role on a team that wins the Big Ten Conference. But his skill set is just unfortunate enough that really, really well-coached teams that also happen to have really, really talented players can basically nullify him. And so while he would have helped this team, I completely understand the sadness that comes with losing Ty Rodgers. I'm not sad. Like, it's sad more because I've followed Ty Rodgers over the last 3 or 4 years. But I think we had this conversation yesterday. If Ty Rodgers' name was just blocked off and all I knew about him was his skill set and his numbers, and this were to happen, I think I would be a lot less bummed out. And I'm not just speaking for me. I think Illini Nation in general would be a lot less bummed out. Again, it's all the credit in the world to Brad Underwood. We talked about this. I mean, Ty is the epitome of what a Brad Underwood guy is. But Brad Underwood wants to win a national championship. And I do think that conversation that happened, I think Jeremy Warner said in the last day or two, in that conversation, Brad was honest with Ty, probably. And as you said, Ty's in practice. He sees the guys that he's playing against. And one of my keys on yesterday's episode for today was what that minute, how that would be divvied up between the three, between Trey White, Will Riley, and Ty Rodgers. And Ty Rodgers basically made the decision for everyone. And I think ultimately, as you said, this was the right decision for Ty Rodgers. And it might hurt Illinois in the short term in the sense where I'd love to have Ty Rodgers off the bench, providing the intangibles that he does. But if ultimately that means that Will Riley and Trey White now don't have to look over their shoulder to, split up their minutes to a guy who one of the two returning players from last year's team, like no longer does Brad Underwood have to address questions. No longer does a kid like Ty Rodgers have to address questions like, why aren't you playing anymore? I think this just could be good for the locker room in general. And also right after this, let's get to some of the comments in the chat. We've got a lot of people with a lot of opinions here, and I can't wait to get to them. All right. Like I said, if this is your first time joining this channel, please hit that like button, subscribe button. My goal is to hit 1,500 before my birthday, which is in about about 5 weeks from now, December 11th. So we're at 1420 or so. So please hit that like button, subscribe button, send this to any Illini fans in your life. Jason, long supporter of this show and Illini Cast, says Illinois Illini are solid. I've said this and I'll say it again. Trust Daddy Brad. He has brought this program from the bottom to the top. I don't think you're going to find two bigger fans of Brad Underwood than Austin and I.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make one comment on the last segment on Ty Rodgers. I truly think that Ty was probably waiting on seeing if Tomislav was going to be eligible or not, because then that would force Illinois to play smaller. And I think that's a topic on why Ty waited until last minute to get into the redshirt era of his life, because if you go small, that propels Ty to be the starting four. But now that you don't really need him as the starting four, you have Hummerkaus at the 4, and then you have Ivisic at the 5. And I think that really propelled Ty Rodgers to make this redshirt decision.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. And it, again, timeline-wise, all of a sudden that does make sense. If Ivisic has, clouds over his future, whether he's going to play, was the absence going to take as long as January like his brother did, then Ty Rodgers would have been able to, there would be a script where Ty Rodgers gets more minutes. But once Tomislav got approved, then, Ty probably had some time to think about it with his people. Devin, thanks for joining us, says Will Riley is legit. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the consensus tonight. That's what Illini fans are going to be pumping their fists, talking about. Nico, great point. And this kind of also circles back to our previous segment. They are so athletic. UConn they had a lot of good basketball players. This is how I compare it. So we saw UConn and Purdue, two fantastic college basketball teams last year, play in the national championship. Two of the best teams, in my opinion, clearly in college basketball. The difference between UConn and Purdue was Purdue had really, really good college basketball players. UConn had really, really good college basketball players who also happened to be NBA players and had NBA level athleticism. And again, that circles back to what Brad Underwood's trying to do here with Illinois. Just make us fast, strong, big, and good, to roughly quote what Stacey King. Steve says points. That's what this team's going to do. We're going to score a lot of points. We're going to give up probably a decent amount of points, but it's going to be a fun season to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, just defense is going to be the issue whenever you get into some slower paced teams. We'll see how Illinois can adapt to that environment whenever another team pushes the pace. Whenever another team, slows down the pace, we'll see what happens when Illinois faces that.
Nico brings up a question. TGL will force his way into the starting lineup by the Bama game. I can see it happen, but I told Austin this yesterday. I like the idea of having a go-to scorer off the bench. Well, I mean, granted, maybe that's Will Riley now, especially after the way we just saw him play. So, you might have a point. We'll see. Kylan had a solid, I wouldn't say necessarily a spectacular game. Looks like 5 points, 1 for 3 from the field. Is that right? No, yeah, two rebounds and 2 assists. So we'll see. I still think Kylan's going to have a pretty long leash, considering he's a hometown kid. Who's got the nice narrative with him. Jason also asks, how many players in double figures? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I count 5. Yeah, I count 5. DGL, Ben Hummerkaus, Will Riley, Ivisic, and Jacques Shonis. All right. Steven says we need to temper expectations a bit. DGL led our team in scoring the same game last year. Yeah, I thought so, Steven. I think, DGL in his first game of the season last year had I think it was like 24, mid-20s. It certainly wasn't the Will Riley hype, but DGL didn't really play much after that. TM, Mr. Debbie Downer here. Hopefully the basketball team won't be an embarrassment like the football team.
I promise you it won't. I think this is a Sweet 16 to an Elite 8 team. I don't think you have to worry about that for the Illini basketball team. And Brad Underwood has done it before. He's going to do it again.
So some of these guys are catching up for the first time. Sorry, I should have put a spoiler alert on it. Harold and Malcolm. So Ty Rodgers essentially, 2 hours before the game, Austin? I believe that's the timeline.
Yeah.
He was marked as out on the availability report. And then Jeremy Warner reached out to the staff and confirmed that Ty Rodgers and the coaching staff had a conversation, and Ty Rodgers has decided that he's going to redshirt this year. They haven't announced a transfer or anything like that, but the writing is on the wall. Basically a very similar situation to what happened last year with Sincere Harris.
Yeah, I mean, it is the Sincere Harris playbook right now. So anytime you see this in the world of college basketball, just know that it is the big time warning that a transfer will happen at the end of the season.
Devin asks, why was Ty on the bench if he's transferring? Well, Sincere Harris was on the bench last year, all year long too. You know, Ty's one of those guys who everyone who I've spoken to who knows him says he's a fantastic kid. I think he's a great teammate. He genuinely is, but he also recognizes Ty Rodgers needs to make some improvements if he wants to play at the professional level. And I just don't know, coming into his junior and senior year, if the role was available to him, the minutes were available for him to show the professional scouts what he really needs to show in order to make it at the NBA level.
Sincere Harris was on the bench last year as well. People need to remember. And Ty Rodgers is going to make these freshmen better in practice too. Like, people forget that just because you're redshirting means you're still going to be practicing. So these guys are going to have to deal with Ty Rodgers in practice, and that's going to make them nothing but better on game day.
Steve brought up my favorite stat of the night, as I mentioned as we kicked off the show. Morez with blocks, 6 blocks. He sets a Illini freshman record. And again, it was his first game of the year. You can really see. I talked about this on an earlier episode of Locked On Illini. I think our center group might be my favorite unit on this basketball team, because you have Ivisic and Morez Johnson who really balance each other out very, very well. They're both Ivisic is obviously a monster when it comes to size, 7'1", 260 pounds or so. Morez Johnson's more of a rim runner, a guy who can attack the rim, but he grabs rebounds like it's his job. And getting the blocks that he did. Ivisic struggled when it came to Ole Miss on the defensive end. Morez Johnson looks like he could be that guy you can kind of throw in there when Ivisic is going up against someone a lot more athletic and skillful. Randy said, how many Illini were in double figures? 5. He says too many threes. If you ask me, Tim, if you think tonight was too many threes, I don't think you're going to have fun watching this Illini basketball team. Because
watch one NBA game and you will think that Illinois is not shooting enough threes.
Yeah, this is a glimpse of what's to come with this basketball team. This is not a one-off. Brad Underwood has talked about really being on the forefront of analytics. And again, I know a lot of people are turned off by the NBA game now, but Brad Underwood isn't. And his son Tyler Underwood is also a big proponent of going into analytics and introducing strategies to Brad. And Brad's as we saw in the documentary Every Day Starts Here, Brad's always open to numbers, and I consider that a positive. That's why I'm so excited to have Brad Underwood on our basketball, as the leader of our basketball program. Also, one thing, I got to run one more break. Happy Hermit says, how about Ivisic? He looked real good on both ends. I love Ivisic. I'm not going to lie. I kind of backed him up all off season long, saying, I thought he was going to be our starter. And I know some of his numbers didn't look all that impressive for his size out in Europe, but he was my personal player of the game against Ole Miss. I did not know he had the soft touch that he does, but that's being around the rim. What I really like about Ivisic is he's not afraid to shoot it either. If he gets the ball, usually when you have a big man, they catch the ball in the perimeter and then they'll hesitate for a second. Should I shoot this or not? From what I saw today, there's none of that. He grabbed the ball. If he was open, if he had space, he shot it. And that's, the kind of confidence that you want from your 21-year-old center.
He seemed to play so much faster than you saw in the highlight videos of him playing in Europe. Like, his speed has improved, and I think that has to do with the strength and conditioning department of the Illini, making him just a a faster player and reading things a little bit better. So I think this might be one of those like Fletch situations, but it's not so much like with a six-pack, but it's just within the speed of the game.
By the way, speaking of Fletch, I can't wait for Will Riley and Fletch to, spend 6 more months together. Will Riley, especially plays like today, is probably going to be in the NBA next year. But if there's a scenario where we get a sophomore Will Riley on this basketball team, and again, Austin, I think I mentioned this yesterday, I think next year's basketball team can win the national championship. Garrett Williams, also a friend of the show. Thanks for stopping by. Fun stuff. Oh yeah, today was fun. We've had up to 130 people in this chat. Illini Nation, a couple days ago, we sombered a little bit, got humbled a little bit on the football side, but here comes Brad Underwood riding sky high and cheering us up a little bit. Happy Hermit, the DJL looking better than Kylan so far. Kylan with sloppy turnovers again. And Jay kind of agrees.
That's going to be something that Kylan's going to have to deal with. Last year ended very sloppy for the University of Arizona. So hopefully this isn't a trend. This is more of a blip of the Kylan Boswell career of him turning the ball over, being a little bit too careless with the ball. I think Brad will introduce Kylan to the treadmill, and hopefully that solves some things.
Devin says it was also EIU. I totally understand. But I feel like after that blowout that we experienced against Ole Miss, we also needed a game like this to kind of remind us that, hey, first off, Ole Miss is a top 25 team and they're an experienced team. Losing to them shouldn't be an embarrassment. Do I wish the game was more competitive? Sure. But you know who I think that game script was perfect for and who wouldn't change a thing? Brad Underwood. I think that game went exactly like Brad Underwood wanted it to, because it kind of woke a lot of these guys up in the locker room. And, Brad said it just this past week that they've reached a new level of competitiveness in practice. I'm assuming in excitement for this season. Malcolm says Marcus Liberty, as you mentioned before, in reference to when was the last time we had a freshman this talented? And Liberty was a little bit before my time of watching the Illini, so it's hard for me to compare or contrast, but he's a name who I figured would have been brought up. Let's see. Again, we appreciate all of you stopping by. Come with your comments. Hit the like button and subscribe button while you're here. Philip asks, is there any injury with Ty Rodgers? Not to my knowledge. I think this is simply one of those where
development year.
Yeah,
and transfer.
He's recognized that it's time to move on. Just imagine if this team had Sincere Harris. Tim, I'm curious, whose minutes would he take?
He wouldn't play.
Yeah, I'm curious, because you talk about a 3-guard rotation between DGL, Kylan, and who am I missing? Oh, Kasparis, of course. I don't know if Sincere Harris would run into the same Ty Rodgers issue.
If Ty Rodgers can't play, Sincere Harris can't play, because I think Ty Rodgers is a better player than Sincere. And
Devin agrees, better without Sincere. St. Dominic's Rosary. Okay, so this is also a friend of the show who is also, I appreciate him stopping by every episode, but very much a Debbie Downer. So the fact that he's in a good mood today tells me that the Illini had a fun game today.
I had OCIA and I watched this game, so St. Dominic's Rosary. We're in the same boat.
All right, Jay says, why didn't Ty leave during the summer? Very odd. I think Austin brought up a really good point. It may have been one of those where he wanted to see what kind of role he had on his team. And then when Ivisic wasn't cleared, there was a pathway for Ty to be able to play more minutes. All right, what else do we have here? The 22 Illinois recruiting class was an absolute disaster. All gone and didn't contribute to Illinois. Ty Rodgers, Sky Clark, Jaden Epps, and Sincere Harris. I would disagree on Ty Rodgers.
I think this is more of a commonality than a rarity in terms of all schools' recruiting ability of the class of 2022. And at this point, I think you're going to see a lot of misses. You're going to see a lot of transfers. You're not going to see a lot of oh, this guy's a definitive hit outside of the one and dones.
Kenny says Ivisic is a huge piece, not just on the boards, but offensively, the inside out passing to our 3-point shooters. Yeah, I mean, he's just a really skillful big man, and his brother's also very good. But Everything I've read about Tomislav, I've seen he's actually, at least in the first 2 games I've seen of him on American soil, he's better than what I thought he was going to be. And I was actually pretty high on him coming into the season. Like, he's a good passer. The coaching staff has been talking about how good of a passer he is all off season long, and you really got a glimpse of it today. Let's see. Fred says, I think you mentioned this, Austin. I'm thinking that Ty goes to West Virginia to be with Chester. Ty is a good guy, and I wish him all the best. 100%. I know, again, Absolutely. Austin and I talked about why he may not fit on this team, but I don't have any ill will towards Ty Rodgers. This is one of those where he's been one of my favorite players on the team in years prior, but I get the vision. I love Brad Underwood's vision for what I want this Illini team to be and what he wants this Illini team to be. And if he recognizes that he needs to upgrade in certain spots, and if that means the expense of Ty Rodgers, then quite honestly, I'd rather Ty Rodgers, go somewhere else where he's going to play and have a chance to maybe play at the next level, as opposed to squander his last 2 seasons of college basketball and then all of a sudden, have to find a different career and kind of wonder what if.
Absolutely.
All right. If there's a fierce injury at the 3 or 4, could Rodgers give up his red shirt and rejoin the active squad? This question was asked a lot with Sincere Harris last year. Hypothetically, I guess. I hate talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah. But you're kind of almost. I hate talking about it because it would probably have to happen early in the season, right? And it would happen like a season-ending injury, essentially, to a Will Riley or a Trey White. Where all of a sudden Ty Rodgers sees the worth in not using the red shirt. I don't see that happening. And quite honestly, I hope it doesn't happen, because that probably means something happened to Will or Trey. Sorry, since this Jake Davis guy couldn't throw the ball in the ocean, I thought his best attribute was his shooting. You can't play all 11 guys. Sorry. So, if Jake, this is a, transition year for Jake Davis, where he, works with Fletch and is one of those practice guys, and then he becomes an ace shooter his junior and senior year. I'm okay with that.
I think Jake is better than what he presented tonight. I think it's a mental thing tonight, because your first game at your new place, State Farm Center, it's bumping. I just think that Jake got in his own head. I think it was more mental than physical tonight.
So we're out. I usually go live immediately after the game is over, so I missed the press conferences. But Malcolm here says, just watch Underwood's post game. He looked like he was very disappointed in Ty's red shirt. If I didn't know better, and I don't, I would say he was struggling not to cry. Malcolm, I'll take a look at that. Again, I didn't watch it because Austin and I came on live immediately afterwards, as I will after every single game. So again, if this is your first time around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don says, any dunks? Were there? Which is crazy to think about, because this team is so incredibly athletic, as one of the people in the chat said earlier.
I think Ivisic had a couple, right? Like just back-to-the-back post dunks, like nothing like electric or anything. But
no TSJ dunks that we had last year. All right, Austin, I've got to pretty much wrap it up now. Thank you all for joining us today. Again, 112-67, Illinois dominates Eastern Illinois. We have another game coming up on Friday, I believe. I forget who we're playing, but hopefully we'll have a repeat performance. Austin, before I let you go, let these kind, wonderful people know where they can find you.
Yep, you're already on YouTube, so just type in the words Illini Cast on YouTube and subscribe to us. We are at 972. We gained 4 followers from the Ty Rodgers news breaking, and so yeah, we want to get to 1,000. So like, share, and subscribe to Illini Cast. We do more long-term shows than here on Locked On Illini. So give us a follow there at Illini Cast, and and then Twitter AB1132 for my thoughts during the game.
Appreciate having you on, Austin.
Absolutely, thank you, Sunny.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you. I saw a lot of new faces. We had about 130 people join us in the chat today. My everydayers, please say hello. Let the folks in here know that this can be your one-stop shop for everything Illini when it comes to football, obviously basketball, both the men's and the women's side. And if there's another sport you want me to cover, you let me know. I'm here for you guys. It's my show, but it's your show as well. You guys get to play producer. Find me on your favorite social media. Do a search for Locked On Illini. If you send that account a message, just know you're sending me a message. It's going to be me that responds. In the future, I'm going to have call-in shows. If you have interest in being the guest on the show, like today Austin was, shoot me a message. Let me know. I'll work something out. Again, I'm here every single day, so I'm always trying to, get to know the community and get us all, just continue to build for what could be eventually a national champion. But again, that's going to wrap it up. Tomorrow's episode, I'm really going to focus more on this Ty Rodgers situation. I have a lot of thoughts. I hinted at some of the thoughts today. I know that's what a lot of you want to talk about, but today it's all about 112-67, a dominant Illinois victory. Will Riley, DGL with fantastic games. Let's go to sleep with a smile on our faces. And tomorrow morning, I'll be going live talking about Ty Rodgers. Until then, ILL. Love you guys.